Hey everyone, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Ileana. Welcome to the Armory.
This is a place where believers can be encouraged to live for Jesus and make disciples.
We want to provide an arsenal of resources that help Christians to be bold in their faith.
Our hope is that through this podcast, people will learn to love God's Word and abide in Christ.
Thanks for joining.
All right, well, welcome to this week's episode of The Armory.
Welcome.
We're back.
Better
Crazy.
than ever.
So I was just thinking, you know how we always say we had a crazy week? You know, and you're always like...
Why do we always say that? Yeah.
But I was thinking, oh, we didn't really have a crazy week this week.
Oh.
But I realized we did.
Oh, yeah, my family was here.
Family was here.
Then your
family
family
was
was
here. My family was here. It was Atticus' first birthday.
Oh, wait, that was all
And
last week?
It's not even the crazy... That's been in between this last podcast.
Oh, goodness gracious. Wow.
And Atticus had double ear infection, and we
On
were in the
your
urgent
birthday.
care on my birthday.
Yeah,
So
wow.
we had a lot happen.
And he's allergic to his antibiotic, I think. He's fine.
So
Needless to say, yeah, you're right. It was
we had
busy.
a pretty eventful 2 weeks.
I
Mostly
think-
it was full of things.
I think the thing that bothers me every time we say that is I don't like the word crazy. Like, oh, we had a crazy week. Like,
Well, what if we did?
no, I know, but crazy connotes, is that a word?
Denotes?
Denotes.
I don't know.
Crazy makes it seem like it was so unexpected and everything went wrong. And I guess it was.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
I know.
I see what you're saying.
But
though.
it was just full. Like, our
Definitely.
families
Well,
being here
this
is like
past
the
2
most
weeks
fun
wasn't
thing.
crazy.
No.
It was just full of things.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it wasn't
We had people
necessarily
living in our
crazy, just
basement.
full and
Your parents,
happy.
which was fun.
Yeah.
Loved seeing Atticus. They had a great time, I think. Atticus had a great time. And my parents were in town.
Mm-hmm.
They were staying at a friend's house. My sister was in town.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, it's not really my
Brother, for lack of a better
Marco, my brother, is basically my brother. Not biological, not adopted. We don't need to talk about it right now. Basically grew up with him. He was in town with his fiance.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a full house.
Yeah.
Oh, we did a baby dedication at church.
he got
and
dedicated
we
at
dedicated
church.
Atticus to Jesus.
Yeah.
What else did we do? I mean, his birthday
sure
party
we
was a
did more.
blast.
We brought him to a pumpkin patch, but that was after everybody left.
We did bring him to a pumpkin
He
patch.
was so cute.
We had a fun week. And then, we ended up in the urgent care.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was like past his bedtime, so he was like tired and crying and like grumpy.
And what
On
Matt's
top
not
of-
saying is I was crying.
Sorry, I was talking about Ileana.
It
Atticus
was past my
fine.
bedtime.
But it was a good time.
Yeah.
It's always fun to sit down and
The Lord always provides.
This is why we talk about our week.
'Cause we need a
Ileana and I
debrief.
remember what we did in the past 2 weeks. We go, oh, that's crazy.
Well, probably because we haven't been doing our marriage check-in.
We haven't.
Uh-oh.
Is there any unconfessed sin, conflict, or hurt that we'd like to discuss?
I don't think so. No, I'm
Okay,
pretty
well,
good
we'll
about
talk about it. We can talk about it later.
I'm-
Ileana's pretty good at
I
holding
bring
a
that
grudge.
up. I'm just kidding. Oh, I was going to say I'm pretty good at bringing that up
No, she is.
constantly.
She always is
If I'm hurt.
pointing out my sin struggles.
Yeah.
So you can really work on this.
That's my favorite thing to do. That's my favorite activity. Not just to you, but to everybody.
Oh, man. That's funny. Anyway. What are
No,
we
it
talking
was
about
great.
this week? It's actually a fun topic. This is
I'm excited.
It goes in the vein of our podcast, but it's also kind of a little off-brand.
That is
But
true. I
not
guess
in like
it's
a
not.
not in a bad way.
Yeah, so, I mean, this isn't like specifically like a resource for this specific thing. But we are tackling a conversation around holidays. So, holidays with your families. We're in the season of like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's coming up.
Yeah. Kwanzaa.
Why am I laughing? Is that rude? People celebrate
To those who celebrate Kwanzaa,
But
probably.
Kwanzaa's not a Jesus holiday, is it?
No.
Neither is Thanksgiving, I guess. Whatever. Or Halloween.
I'm thankful for Jesus. Or Halloween.
I'm not
Okay.
talking about Halloween. Let me
Okay, I was about to
backtrack.
talk about Halloween. Never mind. We'll move on from that. I was about to see something I saw on Instagram. It's just
maybe at the end of the podcast you can keep them hanging.
we should have one of those things where after the podcast is over, you could stick around for like bloopers, and we like edit them in. But that would take so long to do.
We
But we make it's like how much money do we make on this podcast? Thousands and thousands of dollars.
Once we start making money on the podcast, we can do that.
We'll pay someone to put our bloopers in.
Okay, here's what we're talking about. family around the holidays. So deciding where you're going to go, when you're going to go, how to have those conversations, whether you're single, like how to have conversations with your parents, whether you're married, how to have the conversations with your spouse and in-laws.
Yeah.
If you have kids, maybe that plays into it. Okay. And then
Huge thing.
unbelievers around the holidays too. And how do you tackle that? And do you go? Do you not go? What do you do while you're there? What do you say?
Yeah. So this is one of those things where when you first brought it up, I was like, I don't need to talk about that. But then I'm like, well, this is something people deal with every year.
Yeah.
And it's probably hard because let's just go in order, right? What you said.
Okay.
If you're single, and assuming you're single in this context, meaning you don't live with your parents.
Yeah.
Because
like
obviously, if you're 16 years old and you go to school, you go to high school, you're probably doing Thanksgiving with your parents.
You're not having a conversation with your parents about you'd rather spend time with, well, maybe that is a conversation.
But you're 16, you live in your parents' house.
No, that's what I mean. But what if you're like, I want to spend it with my boyfriend or my girlfriend? That's probably you live at home with your parents. Submit to what they're going to do for your holiday. Let me give you a suggestion
on that conversation. Mother and father, whom provide everything for me, can I do this? No? Okay. You are wiser than I. Anyway, don't need to get down that trail. But think about it. Like when we were in college, there are seasons when we were both in college and we were both single.
Yeah.
We weren't dating each other. We weren't dating anyone. There's things all the time. Friends. Like, hey, want to come to my house for Thanksgiving? Yeah. Parents expect, you've always gone to Thanksgiving. Your parents are expecting that. It's interesting. And, it's funny because I didn't have to have those conversations a lot. I just went home because I was 3 hours away.
And you were the person who brought
15 people who lived on other sides of the country who weren't going to go home for a short break. Or different countries. And I'm like, you guys come to my house. And we just had a huge Thanksgiving party. But for some people, they're like, okay, maybe your parents are divorced. And you have to
some
decide,
of my friends had that. Yeah.
Am I going to spend time with dad, with mom? Am I going to do the same day, go both places? What if they don't live in the same state?
That's hard.
That is hard. And I think with that, and this will be the thread through all of it, but when you're single, you're obviously not processing this with your spouse. Hopefully you have community you can process it with. But I would just be very open and honest with your family about, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Yeah. This is what I want to do. What do you guys want to do? You got to think about it from your parents' perspective. I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, it might not be true. We don't have millions of people listening to this podcast. So odds are you're listening to this podcast. You're either interested in Christianity or a believer. Yeah. I imagine both your parents want to spend Thanksgiving with you, whether your parents are together or not. So you better have to deal with that.
If not Thanksgiving, maybe Christmas.
Yeah, we can talk about any holiday. I mean, insert here.
Yeah.
But those are hard decisions to make. I know a lot of my friends, they didn't live too far from their parents. And they had decent relationships with them. They're like, hey, I'm going to stay in Chicago for Thanksgiving. Yeah. I had a couple friends that did that. To me, I was a little I was like, oh, okay. Like I always,
countercultural.
And you and I have different experiences with this. Like Thanksgiving in your family is just not a huge thing, I feel like.
Well, just not this whole conversation comes down to I think different types of people. We've been set on traditions or we kind of do something different every year. And just with the lifestyle of my family and ministry, we just had to be flexible to certain things. So we are going to do something different every year based on what the church is doing or what was going on, circumstantially. And so I think, our backgrounds are different in that you grew up more of the we're going to do the same thing because this is what we do. And I grew up in we'll just do something different every year. So if I mention, hey, I might not be coming home for Thanksgiving, it might not come across in the same way as it would for you.
Sure. So you have to obviously know who you're talking to, right? Listening to this, if your family's we're a Thanksgiving family. And it's going to be really awkward if I say I don't want to go home for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and it will crush your mom.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. Think about that. Think about what it's like for your mom or your dad to hear that their child doesn't really want to be there for Thanksgiving. And maybe that's not what you mean by, hey, I want to be with my friends. Yeah. But you just got to think about it from this perspective. There's not that many Thanksgivings they have with you left in terms of where it's just you and them. Once you get married, there's a whole new dynamic, right? Yeah. Thanksgiving with this family, with that family, with your own family. You and I have done all of our Thanksgivings as of late. Well, no. Our first Thanksgiving was just us. Yeah. And then our last one was with my parents.
With your parents,
and my uncle.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Right after
What I mean is, there's going to be a time when, depending on if our families live anywhere near us, which right now none of them do, or Thanksgiving's our thing, and we don't go anywhere, who knows?
Our kids are older or whatever.
And I can't imagine, it's going to be, this is probably really hard for you to think about, but Atticus, who could barely talk,
I
saying, "Hey,
know.
Mom, I want to be with my friends for Thanksgiving."
Yeah, no, that makes me want to
When,
cry.
when last Thanksgiving they were so happy to be with you and you were
Yeah.
making food, and so I would say let's as children, regardless of if you're married or not married, you have parents. Assuming maybe your parents aren't here, and that's obviously a hard thing to deal with. Hopefully you have parent figures, right? But let's consider what it's like to be our parents,
Yeah.
who probably want to spend the holidays with
Yeah.
us.
And I think there's if we're thinking like biblically too around, well, what does it mean to like respect your parents and obey your parents when you're an adult and you're like not living with them anymore?
Yeah.
You're not necessarily called to like obey their command, right? Or to do exactly what they want you to do, but there is still a level of respect there that you have for your family. So being respectful in those conversations and
Yeah.
we'll talk about non-believing people in a minute, but especially if they're believers, like there's no reason you need to be rude in having that conversation. And
Oh, for sure.
I think too, like I remember the holidays before we got married. I remember like being engaged, being like, "This is my last Christmas with my parents before I'm married," and just like crying.
And we've done Christmas with your parents literally every year.
No, I know, but
Which
it's
is
not
funny.
the same. Like
Oh, it's not.
I remember like waking up, my siblings were still coming with their kids to open their presents, and like we knew we were going to be moving away, so I knew that wasn't going to be the reality for me, where I get to bring my kids to their grandparents' house with their cousins. That's just like not what we get to do, and so I think that's just like that's emotional too when you're like going through that transition. But when you're single, like this is probably a whole nother conversation. So just briefly, like the call to leave and cleave to your spouse, like when you become an adult and you're living independently from your parents, like you are your family unit in a sense. Like you are responsible for your own, what you decide to do with your time, how you spend your money, right? And so all of those things play into those conversations with your parents of you're an adult man
Yeah.
or woman, like
Sure.
your parents aren't still holding your hand necessarily through all these things, and so that means you need to be a big girl. Just speaking to women, like that means you need to be a big girl and have a good conversation with your parents respectfully about what the plans are.
Yeah. And then it goes both ways. I think sometimes the adult thing is to say, "Hey, I'm going to spend Thanksgiving with XYZ."
Yeah.
Sometimes the adult thing is saying, "Hey, friend, I feel like I just need to spend Thanksgiving with my parents."
Yeah,
I think it would
for
crush
sure.
my mom if this was the last year. If she thought this was the last year I was spending Thanksgiving.
Yeah, no, you're right, for sure.
So I think it goes both ways. But if you look at the same thing, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the season of holidays right now. Kwanzaa, I don't know, is that around now? It looks a little different too when you're married.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I believe married couples are not prepared for when they get married. Not specifically just these couple holidays, but having the where's our time go
Yeah.
when it relates to family conversation.
Yeah, that's
This is the conversation
conversation.
people have once they're married. And they realize, oh, I didn't realize that Christmas was that big of a deal for your family. So you guys are asking me to go there, but I wanted to go with my, so this is the whole thing. We were lucky enough in our premarital counseling, we had these conversations.
I honestly don't even remember.
I have no idea what we talked about, but I
Okay.
remember we did talk about it.
Okay. We also were engaged over holidays, and because of COVID, I feel like we just kind of knew things about each other. But
That's true.
some people don't have that experience.
No. And so that's going to be fun, right? And we are navigating that literally today.
Today we were talking about it.
our parents, both of our sets of parents were wondering, like, hey, what are our Christmas plans?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are our Thanksgiving plans? And her parents are in ministry, so it's a lot harder for them to just travel like
Mm-hmm.
it is for us to just go somewhere. So I think we've kind of relegated the idea that we're not going to do anything with your family for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's another thing. Like, we just understanding, like,
Yeah.
your family does usually a bigger Thanksgiving than my family, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And so we have to you have to understand, okay, what is it that your spouse kind of grew up with?
Yeah.
But I think there has to be an idea of, like, there has to be humility, right? And being able to put the needs of other people before yourself.
Yeah.
And so whether that's putting the needs of your spouse before yourself, maybe it's putting the needs of your guys' parents before yours. Like, hey, this might not be ideal for us, but this is like what our parents really want us to do. Maybe you have parents who are older and like you're taking care of them, so your choices are limited, right?
Yeah.
So I think just taking those things into consideration. We're both also really blessed with believing sets of parents
Who like each
other, get along with each other
Yeah.
well. I mean, there are so many people we're close to who the idea of their parents and their in-laws talking to each other is like
Crazy.
in no world would that ever happen for them. And so our perspective on this, I think, is like, and I don't think this should change, but it's maybe easier for us, is to have really open and honest conversations with your family, to tell your parents or to tell your in-laws, like, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking and this is our why, like this is why it's going to be important for our family to do this, and then navigating the fallout of that, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, and that's easier, I think, maybe for us to do than other people,
For sure.
just because of our relationships with our parents. But
Yeah.
I think that application still applies.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to sit down with your spouse and essentially say, "Hey, both of our parents. Let's lay out the realities. Both our parents would love to spend all the holidays with us.
Yeah.
We have to choose.
Yeah.
This year, we might not see your family.
Yeah.
This year, we might not see my family. Like, we have to make those kind of calls. And next year, we're gonna have to flip it.
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation to have, right? Especially if you come from families with like deep rooted traditions. But you guys are gonna that's something I would recommend if you're engaged right now or if you want to be married.
Yeah.
Have that conversation with your fiance before you guys get married.
Yeah.
Set expectations going in of like, hey, let's talk about this because it's gonna come up. Promise you.
Yeah.
Here's the hard part. The hard part is for some people saying, hey, we are a family. And our family is now the most important family.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just use our families as examples because it's us. Maybe my parents are going to be really upset if we tell them, hey, we're going to spend Christmas with Ileana's parents.
Mm-hmm.
That's a decision we're going to have to make. And if they're not going to be okay with it, that's on them because you and I are a family now.
Yeah, we can't control their response to what
No.
we decide to do.
And like you kind of said earlier, we're going to kind of put on your big boy pants, put on your big girl pants, and hey, this is what we've decided, and this is what we're going to do with our family.
Yeah.
Now, we're in a situation where it's a little easier for us, I think, because we even had, it's just funny. I remember even like when we lived in Texas talking with so many people about like how we used to pretty much every year since we've gotten married, we spent New Year's in like a cabin with all our families. And the people are like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we do that. We have fun. But that's something you guys are gonna have to decide as a married couple, and it's not gonna be easy. Some years are gonna disappoint this side of the family. Some years you're gonna disappoint this side of the family. No one's always gonna be happy all the time.
No, and I think really this comes down to like you need to be talking to your spouse about what it is that you want. Like I can't assume that Matt knows what it is I want for Christmas. Like that's not fair of me to be like, well, he obviously knows this is what I would want ideally, and so he's just going to make sure that happens for us. Like you're leading, you're going to decide, like you'll have the conversations with parents. That's not fair of me to assume that you know what I want. So unless I'm able to voice that to you, and us get on like an agreement of what it is we want to do, then we're not going to be able to do that.
For sure.
But
and then I think the big question that people have, because I think this affects almost everyone. If it doesn't affect you during Christmas, maybe when you're with your immediate family, maybe it affects you during Thanksgiving when you're with potentially with more extended family, is how do we have the conversation? How do I do holidays well with non-believing family members? And this goes true with everything. You think of like Thanksgiving, right? Everyone always jokes about, hey, we're not going to talk politics during Thanksgiving, or we're not going to do this.
Yeah.
Like there's that one.
you have a thing that are off limits to talk
There's
about.
that one family member that they know I'm a believer, but I'm not going to bring it up. And I think that one of the biggest things around holidays specifically is how do we have those conversations?
Yeah.
What do we do? I think the thing that's the most important, whether you're single, whether you're married, and you're going to be spending time with non-believing family members, and if you're a Christian, hopefully your goal is that they're no longer dead in their sin, that they're believers one day. So if that's our ultimate goal, we're like, okay, am I going to be that guy who's always, hey, just so you know, if you don't confess your sin and repent, you're going to be in hell? Like, I'm not saying that. But we need to learn as Christians how to share the gospel with our actions before we share them with our words.
Yeah.
That's not always true, but I think at the holidays it especially rings true.
Yeah.
I think of we listened to a podcast and we've referenced it on the show before, Becoming Something, and they have an episode of kind of about some of the stuff we're talking about. And one of the things that the main guy says is, hey, go home if you're a believer and your parents aren't, and you want to show them Christ, go home and wash the dishes. Go home and do the laundry, take out the trash,
serve them.
Just
go out of your way.
Them. Like, hey guys, what can I do to serve you guys when I'm here? And watch their mouths drop to the floor. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you, what happened to my child? Why are you acting this way? And when they ask that question, say, hey, Christ has transformed my life. I'm no longer the person I used to be.
Yeah.
It's that avenue. The problem becomes, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, when believers spend time with non-believing family members or non-believing friends, and they conform to their way of living, they act like them, and then they try to share the gospel with them. Yeah. Because if that was me, I'd be like, I'm not buying that.
Yeah, exactly.
I literally just watched you do this, say this, drink this, do this.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Let's just pick an example. I was going to bring up drinking just because I think for even people that we know, maybe that's something where maybe your parents drink a lot, and maybe you still are a believer who drinks sometimes, but it could be a really easy way for them to see change in you if you're not drinking the way they are, or if you are choosing not to do that. Yeah. Or just things like that. Or that's choosing not to partake in family gossip, right? I'm sure that's a big thing around the holidays. If you say this isn't going to be glorifying to the Lord and isn't going to be beneficial for myself, so I'm going to go to the other room, or I'd like to change the subject or whatever. There have been times where me and you have had to tell, not our families, but people that we're with, that we care about, this is gossiping, this is not beneficial to the Lord, and we will not be participating in this. That might be a place to do that. And I'm not saying to do that in a rude way, or to have a conversation about drinking with them in a rude way, but
yeah. Well, also in that vein, know that non-believers are going to do non-believing things.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you see, and alcohol is one of those obviously hot topic Christian examples, but I think anyone agrees, any Christian believes the abuse of alcohol, getting drunk, is not something Christians are supposed to do. But when your non-believing family members do that, the response from you should be probably, hey, that's a sin. They don't care. Yeah. That's what non-believers do. But they should see the way you live, and then make a question it. Hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you having this conversation with us? Why aren't you participating in this thing with us? And that's an avenue to share the gospel.
Yeah. I was going to say, we haven't talked about being a parent or having kids at all with all of this. I think of a few things. Feel free if you want to correct me or add to them.
Well, I'm barely a parent, so.
Well, me too. I think some thoughts about parenting is, one, get on the same page with your spouse about what your goals are and what you want to teach your kids around the holidays. Yes, you of course want to teach them about Jesus, but sometimes I think, and again, I'm saying this with not as much experience as a parent, but just experience hearing stories from other people. Sometimes I think people try and protect their kids by saying, we're not going to let them spend time with this grandparent because that grandparent maybe doesn't love them well, or, doesn't point them to Jesus. And I want to protect them, so I'm not going to let them talk to that grandparent. And I think my parents did a really good job raising me with I had tons of grandparents growing up, and my relationship with each of them is different, most of my grandparents loved Jesus and wanted to instill that in me. But if there were times where they weren't doing that, my parents didn't say, okay, well, you're not going to see those people, right? But your kids will learn as they get older, what those relationships look like, or aunts or uncles or cousins. If you're teaching them in the home every day what it is to live for Jesus, they will be able to be around different family members who don't live that way, and then go home and talk to you about it, right? Yeah. I'm thinking of my niece who's and so intelligent when it comes to God's word. If she was around a family member and she was talking to them about Jesus and they didn't believe what she was saying, she would for sure share the gospel with them and then go home and talk to her parents about why don't they believe in Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you're training your kids to do that, I don't think there should be as much fear around, well, we need to protect them from that at the holidays, and decide with your spouse, okay, like, what is it that we want to teach them? Maybe we just want to teach them we're going to be loving and we're going to go serve this member of our family by being there. We'll bring a meal, we'll bring dessert, we'll clean their house for them before everybody or after everybody leaves, or whatever it is that you want to do, right? So that was just something I had.
And obviously every family is going to have to assess, you know, what that level of danger is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's some people I'm sure that say, hey, I can't bring my kids around this family member because I'm worried what they're going to do.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was not
things,
talking about
no,
that.
No, I know. And those are things that you're going to have to evaluate. But we're going through 1 John at our church, and this whole idea of being in the world, not of the world. And there is a level, I think, my view on this has evolved since becoming a parent. There is a level of protection that the church provides that's good. And then there's a level of let's not talk about anything that's bad in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when kids get out into the world, they're unprepared. Now, what I don't mean by that is let's let our kids do things that are bad in the world so that they can do it under our roof first. I think that's the dumbest thing. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Parents like, oh, I'll just let them do these things in my house so that when they get out there, they've at least seen it before.
Drinking.
Protect your kids from all forms of sin. But don't be afraid to tell them what sin looks like, that it's real in the world, and that there's danger. Because if you don't know what the danger is, this isn't so off topic, but if your kids don't know what the danger is, when they find it for the first time and it's packaged in a beautiful little bow, because Satan is the father of lies and wants to say, hey,
it's pretty.
This isn't really sexual addiction, it's just pleasure. That's something that they're going to run after because they never heard about it before.
Yeah, I actually didn't even tell you this. When I brought Atticus obviously is little and doesn't understand this, but when I brought him to the library the other day, there was another kid there who I couldn't tell if they were a boy or a girl. It looked like a boy who was wearing a dress to me.
Really?
And so they weren't there for long.
Classic
at the
public
same time
library.
we were. But they were coming basically as we were leaving. So I didn't talk to the parent at all, but it was just like a split second where I was like, oh my gosh, that was the first time my kid had been around somebody else who I was like, if Atticus was older, he would have been like, he would have been like, are you a boy or are you a girl? You know, or something.
Yeah.
Our
son's definitely going to be one of those kids who just says things and we get yelled at.
Yeah.
He's going to tell kids that Santa's not real.
I was just going to say that. And then I was like, what if somebody's listening to this with their kids?
What if a 4-year-old's listening to this?
Anyways.
Santa is real in our hearts. Right? Just like the Tooth Fairy.
Okay. And just...
I don't want an email from parents.
Anyways, yeah, we were kind of off topic. But there is one more thing I was going to say about this whole conversation. It doesn't really apply to... It's not specific to single, married, believer, or whatever.
Okay.
But I think...
Is that what you wrote down on the napkin?
Yeah, I wrote down on a napkin.
I was scribbling on a napkin while we were talking, and I thought she was going to try to like hold it up and show it to me, like she was trying to get my attention. I didn't want to make it obvious because I thought maybe it's something serious. But I'm realizing, I was like, why is she writing
No, it was just so I didn't forget because I do that.
I'm actually kind of impressed that you can write so legibly on a very coarse napkin.
Well, so you know what's funny? Every time my dad leaves, he leaves his note. Every time my dad comes to our house, he leaves a hidden note somewhere. Not really hidden.
It's because we have no paper in this house.
Yeah, that's true. But he always writes it on a napkin. No, he's done that my whole life.
On napkins?
On paper towels in my lunchbox, yeah.
Just thinking, like, if I ever wanted paper in my house growing up, I just go into my dad's office and pull it off a printer. Or, like, there's a stack of college-ruled notebooks or something. I take a piece of paper. I feel like we don't have any of that in the house.
My family didn't do that growing up.
Like,
we literally wrote on napkins or paper towel.
I feel like we don't have... If someone said, hey, do you have a blank piece of paper? I'm like,
No, you know what I use?
Go over to the church and get one.
This is so off topic. Those little cards right there up by our microwave that we use to write letters to people, that's what I use for paper when I need paper. Or a napkin.
If you've been waiting for a thank you note from us for some gift you bought us... We have plenty of cards to write it on. We've just forgotten. We had a conversation the other day.
You guys, I literally found the list of gifts that we had gotten from Atticus's baby shower. I don't even know what baby shower it was. I had a few of them.
It's probably the one in Michigan. Or
yeah.
Maybe it was over a year
and
ago.
he just had his first birthday. So if you haven't gotten a thank you gift...
Guys, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who's ever gotten or done anything for us related to our child.
Consider
this your thank you. If you've been waiting for a thank you card, it was because we forgot, not because we didn't want to send you one. Also, if you've really been harboring that in your heart for this long, I ask that you seek forgiveness, because that's kind of crazy.
Okay, now back to what I actually wrote
What did
that
you write in the
was
napkin?
on topic. I think we are making things harder for ourselves when we decide, either as a single person or in a marriage, that this is what we're going to do every year for Thanksgiving, and this is what we're going to do every year for Christmas. And I understand that there's like a lot of people who do that because it gives them a sense of like stability or peace, or like, oh, we like to do this as a family. This is our tradition. I've seen that be damaging to people and their relationships with their families when it comes to, like, my parents use this phrase, like, it's an invitation, not an obligation. So we're like inviting you to come home for Christmas, but we're not it's not an obligation for you to come home.
Yeah.
And when we say, like, say when we got married, we said to your parents, well, we'll spend every single Thanksgiving with you.
Yeah.
That puts us in a really hard position to say, if there's something that does come up, we've already kind of promised that ahead of time.
Yeah.
And those expectations are set. And so if you go into your marriage being flexible and being humble, or into adulthood being flexible and humble, to say, like, circumstances might change every year. And so this is what we're going to do this year, but that might change next year. Like, I think that's really, really hard for people. But I think that could be beneficial in having these open conversations and maybe make it easier.
Yeah.
And maybe that needs to be a shift. Maybe you've never done that before in your marriage when it comes to holidays.
I did not know you were anti-tradition. I'm learning new things about you every day.
Is that anti-tradition?
No, it's not at all. I've never thought about that, but I think that's a good word. I mean, obviously, traditions are fun. Have traditions, hold them loosely.
Yeah, I guess that's a better way of saying it.
No, I think what you said was great. I've just never thought about that. It's interesting. Also didn't know that you hated family traditions and things of that nature. Good to know. I'll have to tell Atticus that we'll do something fun when you're not around.
People can't see that you're making a sarcastic face.
I'm being very serious.
But sometimes people don't know you're being sarcastic, even when you obviously have a sarcastic face.
There's nothing about this that is sarcasm. I'm just kidding. No, that is actually really interesting. I never thought about how that... I think when people think of family traditions, people are like, make family traditions, have family traditions, which is a good thing, right? Especially for your kids growing up, right?
Yeah, it's
things
fun for them.
About, but I've never thought about how that can be harmful to people. And what you said makes a lot of sense.
Well, I think it limits you to having those open conversations, because then you kind of feel like stuck and like, oh, well, I told my spouse this and now I can't change my mind, or else they'll be upset.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting.
Oh, and if your spouse is coming to you saying maybe they want to do something else, maybe be patient with them.
Are you leading up to
no,
something you want to ask me?
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm realizing we've been talking about how to go about having those conversations, but if you're on the receiving end of those conversations, there needs to be humility and grace there too.
100%. Don't assume that your spouse is going to come to you and say, I just love the decision you made. Like, they might really just be like, hey, I really don't want to do that this year. And don't assume that that's not right. Like, they'll say, okay, well, why don't you want to do that? Let's talk about it. And here's the thing, right? You're going to have to make compromises in marriage, in singleness, in everything in life, except with Christ. We don't make compromises with Jesus. But other than that,
gosh, good word.
Other than that, I mean, let's realize it's hard to live, in this world without living in an understanding way. Like, we have to every year's gonna be different. This year's I already know, just based on our schedule. We just got our schedule for like all the holidays for like church and like events we're doing. This Christmas and Thanksgiving will look different than it did last year.
Oh, of course.
Doesn't mean it's gonna be bad in any way, but it's definitely gonna be different. Just fun, and it's gonna be different because we're gonna
Baby.
have a 1-year-old. He's basically a toddler. He's got an attitude of a toddler, guys.
Oh gosh,
I can't even replicate it anymore.
It's not gonna be funny unless people see your face.
He's been getting like sassier a little bit, just like you could tell when he doesn't get what he wants, he'll make a little fuss, and he's such a happy baby that he snaps out of it immediately. So Ileana got coffee today with someone, and she had like her leftover Starbucks. It was like there's like nothing in it.
That's what it was. I was thinking it was from when we put his shoes on, but it was from the Starbucks cup.
No, it was in a cup, and it was on the windowsill, and he went to grab it, and I pulled him off and said, no, you can't have that.
He wanted to shove the straw down his throat.
It's just like water, ice, and a straw. So like, you're not going to have that. And he started, whining. Like, okay, yeah, he doesn't want to get it. And then Ileana grabs him, and he's flailing his body, and looks at me, and he's like, "Ugh," and he makes this like noise.
He like grunts at Matt
And
in pure disobedience.
I said, "Oh no!" I said, "You will not talk to me that way." It was the first time I ever like looked at him, and I was like, "Absolutely not." He obviously has no idea what I was saying.
I think you were like,
I was just
you
so
did that
taken,
at your mom and at me.
I was just so
Like,
taken
not
aback because that was not like a I didn't get what I want kind of whine. Like he made a point to make a noise that we've never heard. That's clearly saying
I'm mad at you.
he's basically saying no.
Oh yeah,
without
and he
saying
learned
no.
how to do no in sign language
He
and
was
says it
basically
now. So that's
he's
just
basically
fantastic.
doing no without saying no, and I was like, "No, sir, this is not a democracy. This is how things work around here."
This has basically turned into a parenting podcast, but it makes me realize how discipline, gosh, is so hard because you literally have to start at age 1.
That's my thing. And listen, I'm like the least qualified person to talk about disciplining your children. My son's barely old to be disciplined. But if you wait, I'll just say this because we know lots of people in this world
gosh.
that have children that either they don't care about how they discipline them or they struggle with it. And it's something they're really trying to work through. But if you wait until your kids are 3 years old to start disciplining them, I promise you they're not going to get it.
3, 5. Oh,
They need to you need to start teaching your kids right and wrong expectations before they even understand them, so that it becomes commonplace. We taught our son how to say mama and dada before he was able to speak, because eventually he hears it and he repeats it.
Right.
He repeats it and then he learns it. He used to just say it. I remember when he started saying mama, he would say it. We'd hold up something and he'd go mama. Like he didn't know what it meant. And now he definitely does. Like you come in the room, mama, I come into the house. He says my name,
Yeah.
So anyway, this is way off topic. But
We
didn't go off topic at the beginning. We kind of stayed. We jumped right into it, so we had to go crazy at the end.
Yeah, that's true. And you even had something you were holding on to maybe say at the end.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it is.
I'm trying to decide if it's wise for me to say.
What minute mark are we at here?
35. Here, I'll say it.
Halloween.
I'll say it. This is about Halloween. Also know that I'm not the authority or truth. Jesus is the way, the
that's
truth,
true,
and the
you
life.
guys. Take everything we say to scripture.
This is my opinion. And
say your opinion.
Halloween. First off,
I don't know what you're going to say.
Christians get all bent up about Halloween, and for some reasons I understand. First, before you form opinions on Halloween, do your research on the history of Halloween and what it is.
I don't even know. I just
People
assumed I know.
People just assume Halloween is like Satan occult worship, like that's where it's always been from. All that stuff. Does satanic stuff happen on Halloween? Absolutely. Should you celebrate Satan and worship Satan? No. Is it satanic to dress up and get candy? No. I'll give you an example. Sometimes we go to the store wearing our sweats and we go buy candy. We eat it on the couch. There's nothing wrong. There's something wrong with that. But you have young kids. They like to dress up like fairies or Power Rangers and they run around the house. There's nothing satanic about that. There's nothing satanic about taking them to someone's house who's like, hey, you want some candy? And you're like, okay, we're going to take some candy. Happy Halloween. That's okay. No, you're not you don't have to do it. I don't know if we'll do it. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
If your kids want to dress up as a character and get candy, that's called being a child. It's not worshiping Satan.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard conversation.
That doesn't mean you have to do it.
No.
You might think there's so much associated with it. We want to have nothing to do with it. Great.
Yeah.
Same thing with we already broke open the floodgates with Santa Claus. We've talked about it. We're probably not going to do Santa.
Yeah, probably not.
If we do Santa, does that mean we're worshiping Santa or worshiping Satan or like we're doing something wrong? No, we just don't think we're going to do it.
I just don't really want to do it. It
seems
like a lot of work.
We just don't really care about doing Santa. So if you don't want to do Halloween, that's fine. But don't be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe so-and-so took their kid to get candy and she was dressed like a fairy. Stop it.
I actually just really don't like Halloween for my own sanity because I hate people in costumes and masks. We did trunk or treat at our church and there was a little kid who came up to get candy from our trunk with a mask on.
Yeah, it was
and
scary.
Thank you for Matt taking the charge and giving him the candy because I literally couldn't even look at him. I was so scared. He was like 5.
I guess what I meant to say about that is just there's only so much brain power to have worthless opinions. So don't be upset that people get candy on Halloween. If you're probably the toothpaste house that gives out toothpaste and raisins. Like we don't need those people.
You love raisins.
I do, but if someone tries to give me raisins on Halloween, if I'm walking to someone's house Back in when I was like a kid, if I was going in the cold with a costume on to get candy and someone handed me raisins, I'd be like, no, canceled. Anyway, hopefully no one's listening to this anymore. We've digressed. Lost all
Speaking
credibility
of,
on my
let's go eat our candy on the couch.
Seriously.
Before bed.
Anyway, no one cares about our Halloween opinions. But
I hope this is helpful.
Speaking of Halloween, hopefully...
regard.
Yeah, I just think there's so much tension that comes around with the holidays, whether it's where do we go, what do we do, or how do I act around family members that don't know Jesus. And I would say act like they don't know Jesus, and you're the only person they're going to ever see who knows Jesus. How would you act? You're going to act differently.
Yeah, it's good.
And then when they ask you, hey, why are you so different? What's going on with you?
Why are you so nice?
Tell them about Jesus. Tell them what he did for you. Tell them what he's still doing.
Oh, that was good.
As always, before Eliana and I record, we go, this won't be that long. This will be a quick episode, and we'll go back to do whatever we're doing.
Yeah, but that was a good one.
40 minutes have passed. I think we can all agree that my tirade on Halloween was definitely the highlight of this podcast. Anyway.
I'm getting delusional. I need to go to bed.
Anyway, we love you guys. We're excited to keep doing this podcast, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Peace.